In Oscar Wilde's The Selfish Giant, a giant builds a wall around his garden to keep children out, causing a perpetual winter there. When he sees children re-enter through a hole in the wall, bringing spring back with him, his heart melts. He allows them to play, but his beloved little friend from the tree disappears. Years later, the aged giant finds the boy again, bearing wounds of love, who reveals he is from paradise and invites the giant to join him there. The giant is later found dead under a blossoming tree, having been taken to paradise. The Selfish Giant's Garden. Once, there was a magnificent garden that belonged to a giant. This was no ordinary place. It was a wonderland for children. The giant's garden was filled with vast stretches of soft green grass, which felt like velvet underfoot. Dotted among the grass were flowers that shone like stars, adding splashes of vibrant color to the landscape. Standing tall and proud were 12 peach trees. In the springtime, these trees would burst into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, filling the air with a sweet fragrance. When autumn arrived, they would bend under the weight of rich, juicy fruit. The garden was a symphony of life, with birds perching on the tree branches, their songs so sweet that the children would often stop their games just to listen to their beautiful melodies. For the local children, this garden was their personal paradise. Every afternoon, on their way home from school, they would slip into this enchanting haven to play. It was a place of pure joy and boundless freedom, where their laughter echoed among the trees. They found endless delight in the pretty little flowers and the sprawling lawns perfect for their games. The garden was a world away from the dusty roads, a magical sanctuary where their youthful spirits could soar. It was their special place, a treasure they cherished more than any toy. The giant's selfishness and the coming of winter. This idyllic scene was shattered when the giant returned. He had been away for 7 years, visiting his friend, the Cornish ogre. Upon his return, he found the children playing in his beloved garden. In a gruff and terrible voice, he roared, "What are you doing here?" The frightened children scattered, their joyful cries replaced by a sudden, fearful silence. The giant, consumed by selfishness, declared, "My own garden is my own garden. Anyone can understand that, and I will allow nobody to play in it but myself." He had no desire to share his beautiful space, believing it was his alone to enjoy. Driven by his possessiveness, the giant decided to seal off his paradise from the world. He immediately set to work building a high wall all around the garden, a formidable barrier of stone that blocked any view of the beauty within. To ensure his orders were understood, he put up a notice board. The sign read in stark, unwelcoming letters, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." This wall was not just a physical structure. It was a symbol of his cold, closed-off heart, a monument to his selfishness that ensured no child could ever enter his garden again. The poor children now had nowhere to play, and they could only wander the road, reminiscing about the beautiful garden that was lost to them. With the children gone, a strange and somber change fell over the garden. When spring arrived in the country, with its little blossoms and birds, it skipped the giant's garden entirely. The birds did not care to sing in a place where there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. A perpetual winter took hold inside the high walls. The snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silver. They invited their formidable friend, the North Wind, to stay with them. He came, wrapped in furs, and he roared all day about the garden, blowing the chimney pots down. The garden, once a vibrant sanctuary, was now trapped in a harsh, unrelenting cold, a bleak and desolate landscape of snow, frost, and howling wind, mirroring the coldness in the giant's heart. The coming of spring and the giant's change of heart, the giant sat at his window, looking out at his cold, white garden, and wondered why the spring was so late in coming. But spring never came, nor the summer. One morning, however, the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard the most wonderful music. It was a little linnet singing outside his window, and it sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musicians passing by. This was the first note of a magical awakening. At the same time, a delicious perfume wafted in through the open casement. "I believe the spring has come at last," said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. The sound of the bird and the scent of the flowers were the first signs that the long, cold winter was finally beginning to thaw. He saw a most wonderful sight. Through a small hole they had found in the wall, the children had crept back into the garden. They were sitting in the branches of the trees, and in every tree that he could see, there was a little child. The trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently above the children as heads. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. The garden was blossoming again, alive with the joy and life that only the children could bring. It was a lovely scene, a vibrant tapestry of color and happiness that stood in stark contrast to the desolate winter that had held the garden captive. Yet in one far corner of the garden, it was still winter. There, a small boy stood, so tiny that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all around it, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still quite covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. "Climb up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could. But the boy was too tiny. As the giant watched, his heart melted. He realized how selfish he had been. He crept downstairs, opened the front door softly, and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. The giant strode up behind him, took him gently in his hand, and placed him up in the tree. And the tree at once broke into blossom, and the birds came and sang on it. The little boy, filled with gratitude, stretched out his 2 arms, flung them around the giant's neck, and kissed him. This simple act of affection transformed everything. When the other children saw that the giant was no longer wicked, they came running back, their fear replaced by curiosity and trust. And with their return, spring came back to the garden, chasing away the last remnants of frost and snow. The giant's heart, once as cold as the winter he had created, was now filled with a warmth he had never known. Filled with this newfound joy, the giant made a momentous decision. He took a great axe and knocked down the wall that had imprisoned his garden and his heart for so long. The stone barrier crumbled, and the garden was open to all. When the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. He declared that his garden would belong to the children forever, a playground for them and for all who would come after. From that day on, the garden was a place of shared happiness, its beauty no longer a private possession, but a gift to the world. Years later, and the promise of paradise years went by, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about any more, so he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. "I have many beautiful flowers," he said, "but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all." He enjoyed watching a new generation of children fill his garden with laughter, but a quiet longing remained in his heart. He yearned to see the little boy who had first kissed him, the one who had unlocked his heart. He would often ask the children, "Have you seen your little companion?" But none of them knew him, and the boy had disappeared, never to be seen in the garden again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his first little friend and often spoke of him. One winter morning, as he looked out of his window, he was met with a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden stood a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden, and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. He had returned. The giant ran out into the garden in great joy. As he drew near, his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" For on the palms of the child's hands were the prints of 2 nails, and the prints of 2 nails were on the little feet. But the child answered, "Nay, but these are the wounds of love." This profound statement quieted the giant's anger, and a strange awe fell upon him. The boy then smiled at the giant and spoke to him with a gentle voice. "You let me play once in your garden," he said. "Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." He revealed that he was no ordinary child, but a divine messenger. The giant, who had once jealously guarded his earthly garden, was now being invited to an eternal one. This invitation was the ultimate reward for his repentance and the love he had shown. It was a promise of a place beyond the seasons, a paradise where the blossoms never fade. Later that day, when the children ran in to play, they found a sight that was both sad and beautiful. They found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. He lay there peacefully, his journey over. He was not alone, for his friend had come to keep his promise. The giant who had learned the true meaning of love and generosity had finally been taken to Paradise's selfish heart, redeemed, and his soul at rest in a garden far more beautiful than any he had ever known on earth.